I'm sorry, I don't care what he does for my grade.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of the Faculty Mentoring Faculty Program. Clearly an all-star edition. Good to see so many of you here. Thanks so much for coming to see Kevin Roddy. I will introduce him in a moment, but for posterity and the camera and each other, why don't we go around the room and introduce ourselves to each other and to Kevin, and then I shall present to you our featured speaker. And we'll start with Kirk.
Oh, that's me. I'm Kirk Alexander. I'm the Program Manager for SmartSite and Acting Director of Academic Technology Services in IT.
I'm Michael Solpite. I'm a member of the Department of Plant Sciences, and I teach some courses.
Naomi Janowitz, Religious Studies.
Bernadette Torello, Human and Community Development, and I'm trying to remember when I sat in on your course years ago. First setting.
Bob Summer, Psychology.
Retired.
I guess I'll go. D.R. Wagner from Design.
Heiner Leith, Plant Sciences.
Jack Milton, Mathematics.
Peter Cranston, Entomology.
Steve Faith, IET, Academic Technology, Faculty Support.
Tim Lamy, also Academic Technology Services.
Great. And I'm Andy Jones. I'll be your host this afternoon, and I teach for the writing program and also run programs for the Teaching Resources Center. I've been fortunate over the 4 or 5 years of the Faculty Mentoring Faculty Program to introduce a great number of faculty for whom I've had deep respect and who I've called mentors. But I think there's only been one speaker in all the years of this program with whom I've actually taken a class without looking for any kind of credit. I sat in on it as a faculty member, and Bernadette, it sounds like you might have done the same thing at one point. And this was a class called Computing in the Humanities, Humanities Computing. And I learned a great deal about subjects that were very important to me in my new position as the head of computer-aided instruction for the English department and the university writing program. And that came into play in many discussions that I've had about instructional technology in the years since. But I think I learned so much more during that quarter about teaching, and I think that the many faculty who I've worked with representing the TRC have really benefited from those experiences. Experiences such as seeing Kevin Roddy come up with really interesting and innovative student-centered assignments where students were encouraged to investigate topics in the humanities that really mattered to them. Early exposure for me on different ways of using databases as teaching and learning tools, and helping students to imagine what is important to them, how do they organize that, and how do they do so in such a way that others can make sense of it as well. But especially about ways of forging individual relationships with students, and also the power of the elusive mind. Being in medieval studies, Kevin Roddy knows a great number of things about a great number of things, and would allude to them in class. One of my favorites being that he compared some computer programs to Klingons from Star Trek fame, in that Klingons had redundant organ systems so that when they were in battle, if they were like stabbed in the liver, that they could continue to fight. And that a good computer program could often do the same thing, that if you run across a problem, that it's been programmed in such a way to continue to work. And I've thought about that many times with regard to teaching, that inevitably you'll come up with obstacles, but you have to have multiple ways of working around those obstacles. Sadly, though, my students know less and less about Klingons these years, so I'm going to have to think about new ways of representing Kevin Roddy's excellent points. But I consider him a mentor and a master teacher. You saw in my invitation the awards that he's won as a teacher, and the respect that he has from faculty all over campus. And I'm very pleased that in this, the year of his retirement, that he's come to talk to us today about some of his work as a teacher and his interactions and relationships with instructional technology. Ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Roddy.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Some years ago, come on in, Haruko. Yes, and Antonella, benvenuta. Prego. Si signa. Some years ago, I decided to start wearing my academic robes. Jerry Murphy, my mentor, sometimes wore them to show students what was going on. And I figured, you know, they're paying more and more money each year. Why not start dressing up for them? So I've been doing that. And what was it, Tuesday, the students asked to go out on the lawn. And so I went out there, and there they were sitting around in a circle, and there I was in my robes. And students would come up, stop, look, and then, you know, sort of move on, wondering what was going on. But I invite you to try this, to actually have a certain amount of class in your class. I've tentatively entitled this presentation a takeoff on Clint Eastwood, The Bad, the Good, and the Beautiful. And that's the way I would like to break this up, my experience since 1978 in computers. A lot of it has been bad, much of it has been good, and I have before me what's beautiful, that is a lot of teachers, a lot of faculty who have spent a lot of time using technology to be better teachers, and I think that is a very beautiful thing. I mean, Haruko knows every once in a while she has to change everything, software, everything, in order to get Japanese closer to her students. So there's something else that it's a movie line, and that is Bogart, before he became a hero in a lot of movies, was the villain. And of course, the villain about 7/8 through the movie gets shot. And there's no blood or anything, but he gets to say something before he dies. And Bogart said, this is the only time when someone would listen to the villain in a movie, was his last line. So here I am in retirement, so I can say a lot of things that maybe you guys wouldn't be able to say about various deans in the past. I'll give you an excellent example of the bad. In 1986, I was invited to the Max Planck Institute in Göttingen, and there a very fine computer and humanities scholar, Manfred Thaler, asked if he could form a partnership between Max Planck Institute and the University of California, Davis. And it was very European. The idea was that the stationery would have Max Planck Institute, University of California, Davis, right there. And they could get money, especially from Germany, but could get money elsewhere if this were this partnership. So I came back to the university that summer, and I called up Bob Crummy and said, the Max Planck Institute is very interested in a partnership with you. And he paused for a moment and said, is this a faculty exchange? And that was the extent of his reaction to this. And I said, no, it's not a faculty exchange, it's a partnership, and he wasn't interested. So we lost something in 1986 in terms of I think, a very important transatlantic connection. I've been doing humanities computing since '78, and that itself is a bad story because '78, as most of you remember, was the year of Prop 13. And I had been teaching, I'd been teaching at Loyola of New Orleans until 1976, and my family moved back from New Orleans because it's a very bad place to raise a family. So we came here, and in 1978, from 76 to 78, I was teaching disadvantaged students writing. It was a Vasconcelos program, very fine program, but I saw the mene tekeltharsis on the wall, and I knew that that was going to disappear. So I went over to Sac City and found out something about computers. We worked on Hewlett-Packard machines in BASIC, but I knew enough in 1978, in the fall of '78, to offer my services to the rhetoric department as someone who could do computing for them. And Jerry Murphy at that time wanted to launch something called Project Rhetor, a kind of database of rhetoricians throughout history. And so I did this, and I had to do it for free for a while, but it saved my academic life, that stint, and eventually I got hired as a staff research associate in 1980, and it was that way all the way up until the 90s. So the bad thing was that I was forced into academic computing rather than it being some brilliant person's idea that there should be academic computing, and to go one step further, there should be something called humanities computing, right? Which even very recently has been found to be strange to people, even though the humanities have so much to offer computing in terms of language, in terms of image, in terms of music. There's so much out there that the humanities could offer it. And that's why I did those classes that Andy took for free, naturally, because there was no interest in funding them. So that was sort of the early years of humanities computing. Several bad things happened. This is one of them, that the technology, this is a true floppy disk. The little hard disks that you call floppy disks are not floppy. You've noticed that. This is one of them. This is another one. This is a 1,200 foot. I also have many, many 2,400 foot 7-track tapes, which are now, according to everybody I've talked to, unreadable. Right? They are absolutely unreadable. I understand, and maybe Bob knows this better than I do, that whereas we can read the 1860 census, we can't read the 1960 census. Michael?
Is that because there's been a degradation in the media, or
No,
machines are
the machines are gone. The machines are gone. They're gone. So, I mean, if I could get a machine, it's in tar format, Unix tar format, and thank God Unix is not going anywhere. So they could be read if I could find a machine. I'm hoping that somebody has one in his basement. In fact, I was going to ask you, how many of you have 286 machines in your closet?
I have one running in my lab.
Well, yeah. I mean, it is an amazing thing. As a medievalist, as Andy mentioned, I'm very interested in technology. Here, I'll start with the older one, and I'll pass it around. You can take it out of the plastic. This is a 13th century Bible from Paris, and it is, even though it's 13th century, 1250 thereabouts, readable. Now, of course, you have to know Latin, and as I pass it around, you notice you have to have very good eyesight too, because this was a student's Bible, and books were even more expensive than now, which is hard to imagine. But that would have been the whole book would have been the equivalent of $1,000, $1,500 in our money. Luckily, some of you can look at it. If you look at the side, not with the D, but with the big I, that is, in fact, the beginning of Genesis in Latin, in Principio era, creavit Deus caelum et terram. This is a little more recent. This is the year 1690. And I bought this in Bristol for 60 cents. A lawyer was finally clearing out his files. And this is a superb example of manuscript. Obviously, it's not going anywhere. Fire and flood don't really damage these things as much as they would paper. And you can see that the finger grease from pulling this every once in a while. This is called an indenture. And dentes in Latin means teeth. When you made a contract, you made 2 copies, and then you would cut a wavy line, dentes, so you can see the waves there. That would make sure that this fit with the other document, so people couldn't mess with it. And what's interesting about this is readable, but far less so than that Bible, because the people who put this together were secretaries in the old sense, like we have Secretary of the Treasury. That is, they used a highly abbreviated Latin. Right, so I've been able to make out hoc est, this is, but after that it becomes very difficult to make out, very difficult to make out. So you have the specialization of these chancery secretaries who make up these things solely so they each other can read them. No one else is interested in reading these things except the secretary himself. But as I say, unlike that 1,200-foot tape, it is readable. And one of the great agonies for me in academic computing is the way the industry has leapt way ahead of us. I'm glad you have your 286 still running. I mean, I think I still remember the route to get into it, mine. But we're often highly disadvantaged because the industry puts us out of business very quickly when we've learned some system or some routine. The industry has moved on, and we suffer from that, especially now that our budgets are being cut. Some of you might remember that I was, when I became part of IET in 1991, which was another crisis that happened, Carol Barone appointed me eventually as director of the Arbor, which was a marvelous facility in many ways. One reason it was so marvelous was that it was right next to Sproul, and so we were able to serve humanities faculty. But everybody came, and if you remember, we had artwork on the walls, and we had an espresso machine. They even wanted us to have little internet tables outside the Arbor in that covered area, and I said no, because I didn't want the students to see faculty tapping away on machines and sipping espresso, and the students wanting to get in on that. But everything else was wonderful with the Arbor, and as you know, it was closed down and given over to the old School of Public Policy, which is now called something else, management or something. But you'll notice that the name Arbor is still on there because they never were able to use that room to any effective purpose. And it's one of those shames that something that served the faculty so well was quietly disappeared by John Bruno, right? Another bad guy, right? Among a whole series of bad guy administrators. In fact, I'm sorry that no librarians came. I invited them, but most of them are busy. But there are, oh, I'm sorry. Because of the 4 groups on campus, quite apart from the students, who are most computer literate, it's the librarians. And that has always been fascinating to me because the librarians had the most to lose by going away from books, away from various physical media and into electronic media. In fact, Carl Coker, who I really admire, was telling me it's a real problem to get material from UC Merced because, Steve, everything is electronic. So how do you use interlibrary loan on an electronic medium? Right. Exactly. So if something is at Merced, it's more or less locked up. So that's the bad. That's the bad. The good is, first of all, the IET staff. I mean, they've been fantastic. Tim has been with me and Steve for ever since the 80s, right, Tim? And Ray Jang and all kinds of people, Dan Doro. You could just rattle off people who have been fantastic in helping the humanities computing and academic computing. The other good has been the internet. The internet. I sometimes wonder about email, but one of the great features that IET put together was the class list, which is so excellent because when someone drops, not that they love to drop my classes, but they do, the automatic class list takes that into account, and I don't have to fool with it. And when someone adds, it's added already. And it's so excellently designed, it takes 3 minutes to put together. The only thing I kind of mind is it defaults to the TA for a class rather than defaulting to the instructor. And I think that's a sad commentary on this university when they think the TA is going to handle all the electronic material. So the internet, and for me especially the web, and I have designed this class, this web page. I had to call it Kevin Roddy because my new chair said it couldn't be called Medieval Studies, even though I'm the only faculty member in it, and as I retire, there won't be any more regular faculty in it. But he said no, so we have a Medieval Studies a main web page which has not been touched in many years. That's the problem with chairs sometimes. They get big ideas, and that's as far as they go. But mine, as you can see, I have a link to my class and the class syllabus, and you are all superb computer users, and so this is all very familiar to you. But I'm, as a lecturer, I don't get automatic emeritus status as when I retire, something that a lot of Senate faculty don't know that we don't. And one of the reasons I want emeritus status is to be able to keep up this web page, because otherwise I would be excluded for that. But you see, I have some of the most familiar disciplines for students, not only to have help with their imaginative papers, but also to explore the whole idea of the Middle Ages. So if they like music, not a whole lot is, as you know, available on the web as freely as it should be, but they can get a lot of stuff. Images, art and architecture, there's a lot out there. The art and architecture people, especially Art Store, this is magnificent. In fact, yesterday I was seeing Leah Tice over in the art history department, and her job is in danger, guys. But she was a slide librarian, moved over to electronic media, has done a superb job. And we talked about the old days when you'd go over and get a tray full of slides and stick them in, and how much time that took, and how you couldn't zoom in on anything. It was pretty much static. And all that has changed, I think, for the better. I mean, anything that saves time and gives the students especially access to these things outside of class has got to be good. And this is it. And I still hand do my own web pages. I'm too old to go to Dreamweaver in a heavy-duty way. I do use it, but it's, you know, these modern day software is so front-loaded. It just bothers me. I mean, when I was being interviewed for a job over in IET, I said, you know, I'm in Unix. I don't care for software, and I don't think that went over too well. But something I do for my students, this SearchEDU used to be an independent website. Now it's just an arm of Google. But it does something that the students don't even think about, and that is limit searches to .edu sites. Right. I mean, it does it automatically. You could do it by typing it in. Right. You could do, you know, site equals or site:.edu and get the same thing. But this is really critical. I mean, I know some of my colleagues are now doing Wikipedia articles, and now it's becoming more important. But my feeling is something that is so tentative doesn't always have the peer review that it should. So this does. And this will only give you academic sites, which is sometimes not good because some people do put very mediocre research papers on, and they are at EDU sites. But for the most part, it cuts down that huge number, you know, 1,600,000 sites that no one's going to look at. And the real benefit is that there's a chance of something with more integrity and more authenticity than a straight Google search. You know, so I do this for that, and you can see they do all sorts of things. But it's just, you know, you can see searchedu.com. But again, if we looked up just a name out of nowhere, I know it's EO, but see, the first thing that pops up is not the Wikipedia article on you, Jack. It's in fact your own homepage. So that's the sort of thing I do for my students on this page, quite apart from giving them some really delightful material. And the art and architecture I'm most proud of I'm most proud of my colleagues in academia that they are putting things on. As you can see, they're all over the place. And I add 2 or 3 sites every quarter. Joseph Colomb, who's retired, was one of those great people that was also at the Arbor with me. And he did most of this one on St. Kevin's Monastery in Glendalough. But that Fountain Abbey one was probably my main claim to higher-end computer fame, because what I did one summer was to put a map of a beautiful monastery in Yorkshire and make it so the images were linked to it. So, you know, if you wanted to see what, this is in fact a storage area in the monastery, and you can see the architecture is quite impressive. And if I go a little further down, this is, you know, some really beautiful stuff is available online. These are my pictures, but you know, Art Store and all the rest of it just gives the students a real Sitzenleben sort of experience of what it's like. So this is the good. The good is that now, if they do work till 3 and 4 in the morning, and the library, unfortunately, seems to be closed then, except when, of course, the students are rioting and trying to take over. They can get these things, and they can explore it on their own. I have to say, they don't. If I put it all on Facebook, maybe they would. But nonetheless, it's available to them in, I think, a very imaginative and creative way. So I very much admire the web for this. And of course, HTML is not proprietary or any of that. In fact, a web page is in ASCII. So when I see something that's wrong in a page that I've found elsewhere, I can copy that page, change it, and put it up on my own. There was a very enterprising medievalist by the name of Haskell at Fordham, who put a huge number of texts on the web, the medieval source book. He's since moved to southern Florida. And it's a vast collection of texts. He scanned them in, and he sometimes had very poor printed copies, so they're replete with typographical errors. And so I decided, I was teaching the High Middle Ages, and we were in a section about Judaism in the Middle Ages, and one of the most important documents for Christian-Jewish relationships is a bull by Gregory, I guess I'm not connected right now, but it doesn't matter, by Gregory the 11th, fighting against blood libel. I mean, telling Christians not to go there. And Haskell's version was so garbled that I copied it and corrected all the misspellings and all the inaccuracies and put it up. And I got an email from a Jewish organization in New York asking if they could link my site rather than the Fordham site, and I was glad to do it. I mean, if it's more accurate, that's a wonderful idea. I got an email from Haskell, of course, asking why I had infringed on his territory, and I said, well, don't you think that we should, spell things correctly if we're going to do things like that? And he's never written me since. So again, the idea of ownership, from a medievalist point of view, ownership is not important. So my poetry is up, my art is up. And so I'm not interested in that as a critical factor in academic computing. I want students or people who are interested in what I do to see what I do and to use it. And so this is very important for me in terms of what I do. And since everybody I look at is dead now, they don't care either. So we have a kind of agreement there. So that is the good. And the good is marvelous, I think. I think that this has been one of the great breakthroughs for us in getting material to our students all the time and of high quality, which is, after all, our mission. Right? Now to get to the beautiful, and that is you guys. The 4 groups of people on campus, the librarians being the most computer literate, second most computer literate are the staff, the third computer literate are the faculty, and the last group, administrators. Administrators have been not just Bob Crummy, but administrators year after year, going from chairs all the way up through deans and vice chancellors to the chancellor himself. Does he still come to these, the chancellor? Yeah. Oh, the former chancellor, I should say. Yes. Yes. I don't think, yes.
Since retiring, he did come to all of SIT this past summer.
Without anyway, they have been the most blockheaded about computing. They have not sat down with you guys. They have not sat down and said, what do you need? What do you need? I mean, they might give you a new machine, but very little training in how to use it. They might tell you there's great software out there, but not tell you what resources are available for using it. They might decide to take down my UC Davis and put up SmartSite and not give faculty the means to present to students a more or less unified approach to SmartSite. Because I've heard from my students, they love SmartSite, but every faculty person uses it differently. So a student goes from one class to another and gets a completely different approach to it. And I think SIT, being one of the good things that I should mention, though SIT is on the rocks too, that the administration just does not understand, and the cutbacks in TRC is another example. See, retirement can allow me to do all this, right? To say that people are doing very evil things in the name of frugality on this campus, especially in terms of you faculty who are so beautiful, being able to do your job better. Way back in '78 and certainly all the way through the '80s and '90s and now into the 21st century, I do not know of a single faculty member who got a promotion or a special mention or a special accelerated merit because of computing. I do not know of a single person that has done that. And that makes your efforts all the more beautiful, that you're willing, in spite of not only a lack of incentives, but to a certain extent, disincentives, your willingness to go and find out for yourself quite often what's going on, as good as the staff are, they can't answer the phone all the time, to find out what's out there and to try it out, use it, share it with other faculty. But you're doing this pro bono, and I think that's very beautiful. I think that is one of the most impressive things, not only about my experience at Davis, but Davis itself, that I used to go to conferences all the time. People had never imagined such a thing as an arbor. People had never imagined that faculty would be that much involved in academic computing. In fact, quite often the Steve Face and the Tim Leamys and the Kirks would all have to force people into this rather than fighting them off, as you sometimes had to do over the past. So I wanted this to be a celebration of you guys because it certainly has not saved any time whatsoever. Right, Heiner? It's never saved any time doing something special on the machine. In fact, there's a very strange syndrome where you sit down at the machine and 2 hours later you stand up and you say, what did I do over those 2 hours? I don't want to go back to typing pools in that day, but there was a little more efficiency back then. Having faculty who don't know how to type, typing their own scholarship, I think is too bad. But you know, there simply hasn't been the rewards that there should have been all along in recognizing that this is a tremendous benefit for the students. In fact, the whole business, and this really antagonizes me, where a student will sign up for a class and there'll be a little C next to the the class listing, which means that the class is entirely computer, that there is no human being, nobody in robes up there. And I think that's evil. I really do. I mean, that's what National does, that's what Phoenix does, that's what Golden Gate does, but that isn't what we should do. I mean, we're human beings, they're human beings. I think we should have the ability to interact with them and to use the computer, right, as well as we can. I don't use PowerPoint. Heiner, why do you think I don't?
Probably the same reason I don't.
Why don't you?
Because I find using a web-based interface to be much more efficient at getting information through.
Exactly.
You can dazzle the students so that it's kind of
Oh, yes,
light.
especially,
That's not the objective.
that's not the objective. We dazzle them with our knowledge, not with our ability to have a title go zip, 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 zip across the flit across the page. Yes, yes. And the fact that no one's been told, don't read your PowerPoint slide. No one's been told that. So they're up there saying, well, we've got the Shields Library, Medieval and Early Modern Studies Encyclopedia. We've also got the Shields Library subject-specific databases and Medieval and Modern Studies. We also have, right, people can read a lot faster than you can. And yet people do that. They don't, no one has told them that this is something that they can skip. In fact, some people take their PowerPoint slides and put them on the web anyway. And some of them print them out. Print them out. All right, so that is the beautiful part. You've heard the bad and the good, and some of the bad came into the beautiful too. But only out of a kind of frustration, not so much for myself, because I love teaching medieval studies and it's been a great joy to do so. I get to teach whatever I want. Poor Haruko gets a new textbook every few years and suddenly she has to throw it out of everything and go all over again. Something I've never had to do because the Middle Ages doesn't change that much over time. But still, I've watched so many faculty and seen them not become stars because they became so interested in teaching their students well. And some of them are in this room. You know, some spent their time rather than dazzling someone in the upper echelons, trying to make the students better students, trying to get the students to learn more efficiently. So I think that is something that unfortunately will not show up on graduation when the retiring faculty are thanked for their services. All right, so now I'm open for questions. Yes, Naomi.
Is there some bad in the good in terms of students? I mean, is it simply good that they have more access to the internet and you cut out by having EDU? I'm very concerned about this because like you, what have we really gained other than the fact that they can look at pictures without having walked to the library and opened a book? And in terms of I was curious if you had any insights into how to use what we use. I mean, PowerPoint, I agree, but yeah. I mean, beyond that, what are we supposed to be doing pedagogically that you could sort of say is the gleanings that you think faculty who are interested in working on this, you know, what are the best practices that you think we should be using?
I'm sorry to say that as good a teacher as I am, I've never been able to figure that out. But one of the things that has bothered me a great deal is when I go into the library and look at the books that are available, like some of my students are doing the Zaragozan Rabbi Bea. Well, the stuff on the internet is not very good, even in the EDU sites. The books in the library are superb. And I say to them, go to the library and check out the books. And I get their paper, and they have 5 internet sites and no library books. Now, and I say, you know, I should make a stamp out of this and stamp it in the computer, you know, because everything is being electronically submitted now. You know, go to the library. I say, it's the big Nordstrom's type building west of here. And I have not been successful, even though they're graded down for that. Once one of my readers, medieval studies students, actually took the whole class over to the library to show them how to use it. And I guess if I were to continue in this, since I think the problem has become worse. I think the librarian will attest to that we're not getting them to go over to the building at all. Their complaint is that it closes at what, 9 or whatever, 10, and that they work best, the day before the paper is due at 3 in the morning. But I'm very sorry that in a way the good has traduced them into thinking that the web has everything. And it's bad enough getting them off Wikipedia, right? It's bad enough getting them off Wikipedia. Yes, Bob.
Follow up on that. I've been doing what I call the Doonesbury test. I have bright students I like a lot. Not one of the last 2 classes has known who Doonesbury is. No, I mean, and you can do surveys in your classes too, and you will find the same. They don't read the newspapers. They're in social media and other things. It's not just the library. There's some real changes there.
My younger brother, who teaches at Alvarez High in Salinas, and this is a lower class high school, warned me that the texting would go on underneath the desk, because they're good enough now that they can do it manually without showing, and then they can take a glance down and get their. They do it behind their backs, or one person did it on the back of the student in front of her. This is terrible. This is terrible. And I even, last time there was a survey, said I think we should take Wi-Fi out of the classroom and just go back to the T1 cord, and just plug in your machine if you need outside access, rather than giving people things. On the other hand, this has happened last quarter and now this quarter. A student will raise his hand and said, I just checked, Professor, and as a matter of fact, no, you're wrong on that. And I'd have to say, geez, all these years I've been guessing and I was wrong. But in general, I find that distracting from what I want to do in terms of personal interaction with the students. And I really don't like the texting that goes on, or even people who look like they're taking notes on their computer, but not. I once visited Tony Famula's class as part of TRC's program of faculty getting out and seeing faculty. Antonella came to my class on that. But I was way up in the back, where there's not much air, and I saw a student fall asleep on her keyboard, and on what key did her nose land? Z. So suddenly across the screen were all these Z's. It was, it was a photographic moment when that happened. So I think, Naomi, we're dealing with a student who, in spite of all their asseverations that they work so hard, spend a lot of time on Facebook, a lot of time. And, they set up a Facebook account for me when I went to Europe, to Sweden. And I've been sorry ever since, because there's too much information that has nothing to do with what I want to do with life. So I'm sorry, that's the best I can do. I mean, if I were still teaching here, I think I would mandate, as I did way back in the 70s, that they go in and take the library orientation, mandate that, so at least they know how to work the library, because even my best students are simply not using the library as they should. Yes?
Back in the 70s, computing was centralized on mainframes.
Right.
And a lot of the wonderful things we've seen here came from the freedom that came with personal computing.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like there's a trend towards increasing centralization, to the point where most of us could not put up a web page like this without spending a year dealing with the department bureaucracy. What's your thought on centralization versus individual efforts?
First of all, I'm all for centralization, because when I came in the late 70s, we had, MIME 2.8 terminals. And so you already had email, anything you did was on the mainframe. Luckily, Davis was one of the few campuses which was not IBM, which was death to computing. IBM back in those days, really choked you because you couldn't do anything outside. We were on VAX, we were on Unix eventually. This was 1980, I think. This saved us because we weren't chained to a mainframe the way Stanford was, USC, UCLA have been. So I'm wild about that because when my hard disk fails, there it is revving away at I don't know how many RPM, the stuff on the mainframe doesn't fail. In fact, one time early on, something failed and there was Ray Jang and a whole bunch of other computer people retyping. I don't know if you were there, Steve, but they were all retyping in all this stuff. I mean, if your dish crashes and you weren't smart enough to back it up, you're dead. And so I really fought issuing willy-nilly personal computers, even though I was part of TRC, and trained people in DEC Rainbows and IBM Peanuts and Mac. This was before this is the 2A. Apple, yeah, Apple 2A, yeah, before the Macs. Yeah, so I'm not a fan of someone going off with their little box. In fact, there are some people on campus that have their own servers. I think this is extremely dangerous. The IET people find it difficult because the security is compromised quite often with that. So I would like to have more interaction, mainframe that you don't lose files, you don't lose things, you have things available to students. I would like that, but as a dialogue, because obviously you're happy with your machines, your iPads that can go anywhere. So it's somewhat troglodyte of me to keep hoping that we can get back to a centralization that works rather than autonomous computing that kind of puts us out of connection with each other. I mean, when the MIME 2A failed, you just took it out, put it in a garbage can, got another one, stuck it in, plugged it in, and you were ready to go again in 15 minutes, right? I remember having one, and people used to deliver them in a bike basket, one of those bike caddies. So, and they were relatively inexpensive for the time. They were something like $1,200, which for the time, the keyboard was attached to the monitor, yes. So you're not going to find me very wild about someone having, a terabyte in their machine because in the old days we had to say, where is it? And, the sophisticated search engines or the search software on the machine wasn't there, and nobody could remember where they had put some file or some image. Well, what did you call it? I don't know. File, image, something like that. Yes, Heiner. But
everything you've shown us,
yeah,
is all the same. The little piece of parchment is not paper.
Right.
Information on there is not in a media we can read today. And
Right.
even before then and after then, within, say, a span of 20 years, there was a limit on what you could do with it before and after. We're in exactly the same place.
Except, someone can read a Sumerian tablet. Someone can read the Dead Sea Scrolls.
And
right.
someone can read that tape.
Well, if they're in existence.
Somebody can read that floppy disk too.
Well, I can read the floppy disk, as a matter of fact, because I have the 286 machine. But if you know of anybody who can read this, I would be very interested. You do?
That's one of the mandates for the UC Curation Center.
Oh, to find a mothball machine somewhere and put it up. Good.
They're looking at that because so many researchers and faculty have
right.
things like that
and there was
no longer can be read.
Right. So I know that there is a qualitative difference because, as I say, the 1960 census, the machines are gone, the software is unknown. So there are things that are definitely being lost. Now, of course, when the flood hit Florence in '67, a lot of manuscripts were lost. I mean, there is a limit to the durability of parchment. But there, I was trying to find that Dilbert cartoon from 3 days ago that I sent to Andy, in which the Dogbert is made the hospice volunteer for helping people get over dead software. And they ask him what his tools are, and he says compassion and a bazooka. And the last frame shows Dogbert with his bazooka and his arm, telling somebody at the machine, you know, stand off from that Windows XP. You know. Yes, Naomi.
I'm just I mean, there's so many people here with so much intelligence about this. I just want to ask him, is there something we could put up on SmartSite that would make faculty able to avoid using PowerPoint? That would really, because the PowerPoint we use in desperation because of a tremendous limitations with SmartSite.
Yes.
And so maybe what we need to do, I have guest lecturers come to my class who fall into PowerPoint because they're walking backwards against the dark. And the
Yes.
hole there behind them they fall into is PowerPoint. And maybe what we should do is have something else on SmartSite that would permit an interface with sharing material in class with students in a way that is, the problem is that we're beyond the blackboard,
Yeah.
but we don't know what the next thing is. So I'm just curious if you now, looking back on all your time, and you could make up a fantasy interface, what would you want it to be?
Well, actually, it does exist, but I sort of tapered off on it. But it involves the web, that through the World Wide Web you can do PowerPoint sorts of things, right? I mean, I sort of did it when I was putting up my art. I mean, again, it wasn't very sophisticated because I didn't want to, but my woodblock prints. I put these up and, like them. But what I do is have a next page, and so next ones show up and that sort of thing. So, that's basically can be done in very simple coding. The idea about a web page is you steal it from somebody else. That's the whole point of a web page, right, Kirk, don't you think? I mean, rather than invent it, if someone's going to invent it, you use it, and change the name, of course, but everything else you use. So you're welcome to the coding on this, and you can just adapt it. And I mean, it's real simple. It says, here's a place to bink and get something that is the next screen. And again, it's something that students at 3 in the morning can pull up on their own machine and get to. Which is, it just bothers me. Yes?
Actually, you could do that in SmartSite. Just create a web page tool. It lets you create in.
Is there anybody here listening?
It's already there.
Yeah, it's already there.
Take care, Steve. Great to see you.
Back to you.
The working stiff's got to get back to work.
All my lecturers.
Thank you.
Train people to do it.
Train people to do it?
Yeah, well, the great idea of this, Naomi, is once you get it, because I could show you the code of this, and you just say, is that all it takes? I mean, yeah, I know.
That would be great. You could send them an online version of
Yeah.
article about why PowerPoint doesn't present an argument, and that every time you find anybody uses PowerPoint, they have to read Tufti as a punishment.
That's right. That's right.
I think that would be great, but you have to make it.
See, I have them lined up in a table, and then I just say, down here, center it, and list HTML, so the index is a list, and then next is the next file, which is print04 HTML, and the previous file is prints02 HTML, so we're at 03. I mean, and I do this by hand because I prefer to have that kind of control. When I look at especially what Microsoft does to a Word document, that is evil. That is very bad, because they're putting MSO all over the place. In other words, they want to know who's using their stuff. And I find that, shall we say, fascist? Yes, I think I can get away with that for Microsoft.
When you look at HTML pages that have been done like that,
Yeah.
the reason is that the client who wrote the web page in Microsoft Word
Right.
wants it exactly as it looks on the screen, completely WYSIWYG.
Yeah,
And you're not gonna get that doing coding like this.
but
So then you'll have
unfortunately,
to
it's,
tell it how much margin to put into
Yeah.
place, and all these other codes need to be
Sure.
there. And that's what the MSO extensions do. They
But-
don't feed anything back to Microsoft about what's in that web
yeah,
page.
but they don't do it. Because those of you who have tried to translate an ordinary Word document to the web have found serious problems with the way it does it. Serious problems.
Certainly not defending Microsoft.
Yeah, but yeah, it is an MSO. I exaggerated for the point of drama, but the idea is, you know, we can crank these things out if the, you know, control is the important thing, and sometimes it isn't. I mean, that was the great thing about the Arbor. We'd put it together. We show you how to do it. If you want to do more, you knew how to do it. If you wanted to come back to us, we would help you with it. But we tried to keep all the technology as low as possible because some people were still using OS 9, you know, some people were still using XP, and the idea was, you know, not to jack up to Dreamweaver 15, stay down to 2, because actually 2 was a lot easier to use than 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, wherever it's going next. Yes, Antonella.
Looking back at the experience at the Arbor, I can say one thing that for me, what it did for me was that it took away this idea that only people in the sciences could work with computers, and you could use it in the humanities and actually then do something with it, see it work, and not be afraid of things. Because unfortunately, I still work with people who are afraid of the technology and they don't want to look into it. For them, it's by virtue of being technology, it has to be bad. In the humanities, you cannot use technology. Instead of saying, well, I can use this and not that, make use a portion of that, or altogether throw it away, they do not want to use it.
Right.
And in my opinion, especially dealing with the students right now, that's not a good idea. You can still take them to the library. Personally, by example, take your students with you to the library. You don't even have to send the reader or the TA. You go with them and you show by doing, by example, what's done. I'm lucky I have small classes. If we want to do things by pen and pencil and drawings, we do. We want to use the technology, we do. We want to use the iPhone, we do. The fact that it's there as an opportunity, as a tool, but then the respect between the teacher and the student is still at a human and personal level. You want them not to do the Wikipedia thing, then you go with them to the library. And you know, you don't want them to write in a certain way, you write with them. I can do it because they're small classes.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying there should be no technology. Pick and choose, pick and choose, pick and choose. And that the Arbor did that, and going to sit and so on, seeing what's available there. If you want to use it, you do. But you're not afraid of it, you don't feel overwhelmed by it, that I should be using it and I don't know it. I think that's the great thing of computing and the humanities. If you want to use it, you do. If not, not. But we can, you know, without knowing even the code. Okay, because that scares me a little bit.
Yeah, it's no more difficult than Italian. Yeah. When I was working for TRC and introducing people to mainframe connection computers in one of the halls, Susan Kaiser was looking at this thing, and she was frozen. And I said, Susan, you can't break it, right? You can't break it. You can't break it. And she'll see me on the street and say, you know, you're telling me that was a great, you know, insight that you can't break it. And of course you can break it, but you don't have to know that. But my best story is Consuelo Dutschke was working on a project, and back then on mainframe, you could see other people and what they were doing and have something appear on their screen as a message. It's a little bit spooky. And I could see she was wrestling with some problem on the computer. So I typed, "Non abbia paura." Don't be afraid. And this shows up on her screen. You know, don't be afraid. She
freaked out. Really.
She freaked out, yes. Anyway, thank you very much, all of you.